Welcome to the Vikings Collective, where we have high-level introductory videos and presentations. I was highly impressed by that, and I am highly appreciative to be with the co-host here for this show, Garret Greenlee of Football Analysis, Matthew Coller of Purple Insider. I am Alec Lewis, the Vikings beat writer for The Athletic, and very excited to get this conversation going. As you can see behind me, I am still at the Vikings facility. I don't know if I'll leave tonight. Collar was here earlier. Garret has been attentive to anything and everything that has been present today in Eagan at training camp. Let's begin here with this. Collar, Garret, Collar, I'll start with you. What are your emotions like knowing that the day has come for this quarterback competition heard around the world, the fact that it's began? What are your thoughts? What are your emotions?
Yeah, is intrigued an emotion? It probably is not, but I'll go with it anyway because Kevin O'Connell has been insistent that the Minnesota Vikings have a quarterback competition. No matter how many of us have maybe been snarky on our podcast at times about the realities of Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy's past and the potential opportunities for McCarthy to win the quarterback competition. But on the first day, we saw essentially a 50-50 split. And I will give Kevin O'Connell a lot of credit because he came out and said to us, I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to tell you guys what's going on. And when it's time to make an announcement, I'll make an announcement. And he sat down with all of his quarterbacks and talked over exactly how they were going to split the reps. He spent all this time with Brian Flores mapping out exactly what he wants the quarterbacks to accomplish. So as long as the head coach of the football team is treating it like it is a true quarterback competition, then so am I, and you have my attention. And today I tracked every single pass, just like everyone else. I wrote them down in my little notes app and who they threw it to and where they threw it and everything else. And, listening to both quarterbacks, I really thought JJ McCarthy today sounded more at ease than he did during the spring, where he was like a little on the defensive and maybe came across as a bit frustrated. And today he seemed excited and talked about feeling like there was a clearer picture. So I thought, all right, well, let's go then. Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. I'll be paying as much of attention as long as this goes. I don't know how long it will go, but I am certainly intrigued.
Garret, take us inside your mind as you have put in perspective what this was going to be, and then with today's arrival, like how you've thought about everything broadly.
Yeah, so the way that I would describe it is whenever you're about to go down a roller coaster, you kind of have that tug in your gut, like, here we go. This is what we've been waiting for, and we're going up the first part of the roller coaster, and the anticipation is finally here. And to go off of what Collier said about JJ McCarthy at the press conference, I thought that was the most poised and CEO franchise quarterback-esque we've seen JJ in his Vikings career. And I was really, really eager to see that. And I got this sense from JJ in the presser today that he was kind of calm. He was at ease, and he's ready to, kill or be killed, if you will, in terms of the quarterback competition. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. And there's also an aspect of, from my personal standpoint, of Kyler is and has the potential to be a good player, but there's also an aspect of, guys, the Cardinals cut Kyler Murray. We're talking about the Arizona Cardinals, one of the teams that are going to be widely projected to pick with the first overall pick in the 2027 draft. And I know there's a lot of context within the release of Kyler Murray, but I think that some people don't think it's going to be much of a quarterback competition, but everybody knows, I mean, in the Twin Cities, that this is going to be going down to the very end. And I can't wait to see how it plays out.
I'm glad both of you guys talked about the press conference today with JJ McCarthy because, I think in sometimes, and I'm just speaking for myself here, like when you cover these teams, you cover these guys, and these guys come to the press conference and you talk to them, like you can make a little bit too much of it. Probably sometimes you probably cannot make enough of it at other times. But I'm in agreement with both of you guys. He stepped up to the podium. He's, hey, guys, which reminded me a lot of the 2025 training camp in terms of the hype and the buildup for that season. He said excited. I think he said best day of the year, which was like the prototypical JJ McCarthy energy that I think most Vikings fans who are probably watching the Vikings Collective, why they like JJ McCarthy so much from the outset. I think that was probably a part of it. And then I thought throughout his answers, he kept to the script of head down, focus, taking completions, being process oriented. And so I did that. Like, I thought that was a really good way to start. And so I'm glad, Coller, I'm glad that it seemed to resonate with you and Garret that same way.
Yeah, and I think that with JJ McCarthy, he's had some months to process this entire thing and sort of understand what he needs to do in order to really have a chance to become the starting quarterback, which, look, I wouldn't put the odds very high. Well, Kyler Murray was let go by the Arizona Cardinals. I think, Garret, you may have touched on the point of releasing Kyler Murray, which would be to draft number 1, which is where Arizona really wants to be next year. When they did not have him starting in the last 3 years, they were 2-19. So that's a pretty good plan for them. And I respect moving on from a quarterback who could win you 6 or 7 games to make sure that you're drafting high. But, Kyler Murray's career, if we're going off of the priors for both guys, is much better than what JJ McCarthy did last year. Even his worst seasons are quite a bit better than what McCarthy did. But we know this, Alec, that when you're that age, you can mature pretty quickly. And I was even thinking when I was listening to JJ McCarthy about the maturation of someone like Dallas Turner, where he got to the NFL, didn't really know what to do at first. And you saw that from him. And then as he started to really get it, we saw him take step after step to the point where they trust him as an outside linebacker. I know it's way different. It's way more complicated for a quarterback, but I also think that this experience of dealing with the gut punch that is your team going out and getting somebody else, the embarrassment of having everybody talk about how, you're go to the bench, kid, whatever, to then maybe center yourself and say, all right, this is kind of make or break for me. And at least as long as this is going on, we do have to keep in mind that it was just 2 years ago that Kevin O'Connell was calling him the franchise quarterback. So you don't want to entirely dismiss that. And I thought he made it easier to kind of look at what he's going to do here with legitimacy when he, as Garret said, was acting today like a starting professional quarterback.
And I do think, the interesting thing with all of this is, the Kevin O'Connell's process to place and design this quarterback competition in the first place was in many ways to spur the type of growth that we're talking about. And so I do think like this leads me to the question for both of you guys. And we're talking about it a little bit, but it's like, what do you want to see from both guys? And maybe Garret, like with JJ McCarthy, what you saw today from an off the field standpoint is where you start. But I'm more curious on the field. Like when you think about both these guys throughout this training camp, regardless of what the decision ends up ultimately being, just strictly on the field, what you would love to see out of both of them, what is the answer to that in your mind, Garret?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest thing that I want to see on the field from JJ is just consistency and just, consistently hitting the target, because there were games last year where I was holding my breath. I think of the Ravens game in particular, where I'm holding my breath every time he goes back to throw the ball, and I'm thinking, please just have it be somewhere in the vicinity where whether the receiver is Justin Jefferson, whoever, Jalen Naylor, whoever, where they have a chance. And there were a couple of plays within that game last year where they were 3 feet over Jefferson's head, or the one interception that he had that was intended for Jefferson that where nobody was in the vicinity. It was an arm punt. And I want to see more consistency, which that even opens up a broader discussion that was all over Viking social media last year of JJ's mechanics. And this is one thing that I'm really looking forward to this year is, did we, how much rather did we improve on the mechanics this offseason? Where are we from week 18 in the Packers game to where we are here in late July, early August? And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing from JJ. And one thing that I also do want to touch on with the JJ McCarthy discussion is last year rather, we were talking about a player coming off of a season-ending knee injury, and he was also 22 years old. And I heard this recently on another Vikings podcast where the question was truly, and I know I look kind of young, I'm only 27, but the question was
Here, you don't
truly,
look that young. Come on, what are we doing?
well, hold on. The question was like, truly, what were you great at 22 years old? And keep in mind, he's never played in an NFL game. He's, thrown to the Wolves week 1, primetime Monday Night Football. And he also hadn't played a game in over a calendar year, aside from one Raiders preseason game. So for the JJ McCarthy aspect, I want to see more consistency, and I want to see him more comfortable within that as well.
There are some things that, I understand with the youth, and I've also felt like at times McCarthy has been like the final destination quarterback where everything just seems to go wrong for him, whether it's just getting hurt the first time, and that's never happened to a quarterback before, or week 2, when he would have a chance to pick up some momentum. But also he had a year to study the offense, and by the end of the season,
Definitely.
They were talking about dumbing it down, right? And I think that it's the biggest part for me, of course, is the accuracy. And that's something that's easy to figure out when we're watching training camp practice. Is the ball flying into the stands? But I also think that it's the timing of the offense. I think that Kevin O'Connell, in order to make this work with the best receiver on earth, and everybody knows it, you have to have everything right with the timing. So you can't be behind. You can't be slow. And after he had time to have a full off season last year and everything else, like there was an expectation that he would be much more on point than he was, especially late in the second half of the season. So if we're watching these training camp practices, Alec, I think what we have to see, especially as the pads come on and everything else, I think right now this is a glorified mini camp that we're watching these first couple days. But once the pads come on, it should be 1 to 2 to 3 to check down, bang, 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 ball out. And because we've seen Kirk Cousins practice, we've seen Sam Darnold practice. That's what it looks like. And with JJ McCarthy, if it looks like that, then okay, you know what? You throw a ball over somebody's head every once in a while. You can make up for that. But if you're not on point with where you're supposed to go with the football and when, it's never really going to work.
I'm glad you said that, because they're one of the first reps today, and it might have been an 11 on 11. And we don't need to go through all of them here on the Vikings Collective on day one. But like it was a really early rep, and it was a deep drop back. And he kind of took a beat, another beat, and another, and it just felt, I don't know if it was slow or just him timing things up in his mind, but I do think over the course of the practice, even, it did feel like he started to like sync up in his in terms of where it just looked more comfortable. But I think, Collar, you're like, both of you guys, the accuracy and the timing with an offense that, to Collar, your point, is predicated on guys being where they need to be at a certain and very quick amount of time. Like, I do think that is a critical factor for me. Maybe it's because Kevin O'Connell has talked so much about the layering of the football. But I mean, I go back to when JJ McCarthy was first drafted, coming out of Michigan, and the Vikings made that move. Conversations in the immediate aftermath with people who would know, who were talking about the need for him to develop different speeds of throwing the football. And the analogy that is always given that just, it works for me, is like, you might be able to hit a 6-iron really hard all the time, or a hybrid or whatever, but like, can you pull out the pitching wedge? Can you pull out the sand wedge and get the ball up and over? I know Collar plays golf. Garrett, I have no idea. Maybe you play a lot, so I hope you get the analogy. But I think for me, like, that's the layering of the football. And that's why, I said this coming off the practice field on social media, but it was, for me, there were a couple throws down the stretch of this very first practice where he got the ball up and over into windows that, at least in my mind, seemed a little bit like an improvement. And that was obviously a major focus this offseason, and why he went out to California to work with John Beck. A lot of JJ there. Kyler, what do we want? Like, what do you want to see from Kyler? I think you could go a lot of ways with that, because he is such an enigmatic player personality. But I'll start with Garrett, because we've got, it's been JJ heavy. Like, when you just think, what would you want to see from Kyler? Where does your mind first go?
My mind with this question goes to what we did not see a lot of last year, which is honestly the same thing that we just said with JJ, is just consistent. Just, hey, let's get the ball out quick. Let's hit our guys in motion and let's keep the offense in rhythm, which I think is something, well, we realized pretty quickly, but I think we took for granted towards the end of the 2024 season with Sam Darnold. Maybe some people didn't, but there was kind of, it'll seamlessly just, we'll just transition entering 2025. And that's the biggest thing that didn't happen last year that I would like to see with Kyler is let's have everything look natural and not the way that it did throughout so much of last year outside of a couple of games. That's the biggest thing. And one game that I go back to is there was a Mac Jones fill-in game last year. The 49ers, they played the Rams, and he was just such a point guard of the offense where the ball was where it needed to be every single time. If we get that from Kyler, and then of course we can add in his, the electricity that he has within in the run game and the dual threat ability that he has, we'll of course take that when it's needed. He's obviously not a run first quarterback, but we'll take that whenever he needs to extend the play. But as long as we can keep the offense in rhythm and as long as we can keep the chains moving, which is again something we did not have consistently last year, that's what I'd be looking for from Kyler in camp.
Kyler. Collar. I promise I didn't do that on purpose. First episode of the Vikings Collective. Probably should have known that was coming, Collar. Where are you with Kyler and what you want to see?
Okay, let me try to give, because that was a great breakdown. And if by the way, if people who follow you and I, Alec, are not familiar with Garrett's work, Football Analysis, a tremendous YouTube channel.
That. Thank you.
That's how I got to know Garret, was through that channel and him being a guest on my show. So your breakdowns are absolutely excellent. So I'll throw out a different angle on this. I'm going to be looking at the wide receivers and I'm going to be looking over at Kevin O'Connell because I want to see what the body language is like from them with Kyler under center. Because even in the first practice, there were one or two plays where he scrambled that I wondered, okay, I can't tell you because I don't have a replay in front of me if someone was open or where the ball might have supposed to have been. But was there somewhere where it was supposed to go, right? Like, are we going to see receivers kind of looking around being like, okay, I was open on that play and you didn't find me? We did see him make a couple of nice throws over the middle of the field despite the height issue. But I want to see Kevin O'Connell's demeanor as he talks about these two guys, because the way that O'Connell has talked about both quarterbacks, if you just took his quotes about both QBs this offseason, you'd be like, okay, Kyler is the quarterback. He's talked much more like Kyler is the guy. But if we start to see throughout this period of this first couple of weeks and we start to see a little bit more leaning away from that, maybe a little bit, because the thing we learned about KOC last year is when he gets frustrated, he can't totally cover it up. And when he got frustrated with JJ, we heard a little bit about it. And I think with wide receivers, they are the worst people at trying to cover when they're frustrated. Or are they catching passes that, because he had a couple today that were very nice. Yeah. Are they catching passes and coming off the field dancing? Like, they are very excited about this new quarterback. I mean, overall, what it comes down to with Kyler Murray is if you can play within this system, you can win. We know that from multiple veteran quarterbacks. How much can you play in rhythm with what KOC wants you to do? How much are you avoiding checkdowns to maybe throw balls that you're not 100% sure on because you're trusting wide receivers? Those are some of the things that I'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the lowest hanging fruit is just durability. And I this probably leads us down into a different conversation. But like, I looked this up last night, and it says 2022 when Kevin O'Connell got here, the Vikings quarterbacks have been hit 516 times, which is the most of any team in the NFL. And so there's part of me that, like, how long can Kyler Murray, playing within a system, perhaps being in the line of fire in the pocket, take that amount of punishment and continue onward? Like, that's probably my more throughout the season type of question. I think Kyler, I'm glad, you said it. For me, throughout this training camp, it's going to be like, how much can he stay within the pocket and make quick decisions? You saw it today, Collar. There was a play where he scanned the whole field pretty quickly, got to his fourth progression, kind of a check down to the left side, and made it happen pretty quick. The hard part, and Garret, like, I'd be curious your thoughts on this as you just kind of scavenge for information on these, on training game practices. Like the hard part is I don't get to watch back that play to assess whether or not he missed the second read in the progression or the third read in the progression. That muddies a little bit the evaluation in terms of what every one of these days is. And so, Garret, for me, I would just wonder, like, what is life like? Probably like many of the viewers trying to follow, or what's it gonna be like trying to follow this thing kind of on a daily basis?
It's going to be stressful for good and bad reasons, because you're going to want to, you're as the fan, and you're going to want to be like, hell yes, that's awesome. Like, great. And then you said Kyler threw an interception at the end of practice today. It's like, oh, well, it's then there's kind of like a civil war within the fan base where it's like JJ, you have the JJ stands and you have the Kyler, so there's people that are rooting for the other to fail. And I'm obviously not rooting for either to fail, because I want the best quarterback for our team so we can win the most games this year, of course. But so I think it would be different depending who you would ask. But for me, it's hoping that we have the best quarterback play possible for the 2026 Vikings. And I do want to go off of what you said with the Vikings quarterbacks getting hit the most since 2022. That is going to be a discussion throughout the 2026 season, especially with Kyler Murray, given how his height, of course, sure, and given the vertical passing attack of Kevin O'Connell's system. That's going to be something to really pay attention to. And quite frankly, I would be surprised if either Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy, maybe this is newsworthy, maybe this is a bombshell for the first show, but I would be surprised if either quarterback starts 17 games in 2026.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, I mentioned the durability, and my mind has gone down all of those, those roads of, how long can a certain guy stay healthy? If not them, then who? What does that look like? It was to hear you say that it's stressful to follow, and you mentioned the interception. Like, that's why, in covering it, and this is a little inside baseball, but I try to be, and Kyler, you probably have a thought on this too. It just have to be so mindful in many ways of the perception of any one reporting aspect of it. And so, I've said this many times on my own show. I say it in writing. Like, you just try to be as objective, down the middle, factual, stick to what it was as much as possible. But it's difficult when there is so much passion behind it all and behind certain guys to really make everybody happy, I guess, in some ways. It's hard.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I look at it as just the black and white facts of the matter. I mean, as we've gone into this, that's how I've looked at it as well, where Kyler Murray, I think it doesn't really take a lot of effort to talk yourself into him with KOC, him with these wide receivers, if they can improve the running game. And, by the way, last year, the offensive line started only 24% of the snaps together as what the offensive line was supposed to be. And with this offensive line, with Darisaw healthy, Donovan Jackson going into a second year, there's just, I think, a higher potential for the offensive line than where they were last year when they were banged up as much as they were. And as you start to really look into Kyler Murray's career, as I know that all of us have, one of the things that you find is clean pocket. The guy's a pretty darn good quarterback.
Yeah.
But when things break down, it is erratic. Sometimes it's incredible and you cannot believe what you just saw. And sometimes it is terrible and you can't believe what you just saw. And it's really Kevin O'Connell's job to even that out. And it's his job. This is tying back into the quarterback hits thing. Sacks, interceptions, hits, all the negative stuff has happened to every quarterback in this system. Kirk got hit a ton. Kirk got sacked a ton. Sam Darnold got sacked a ton. He got hit a ton. And all of them, through picks and stuff, it's I think eventually you get to the coach and the system. And is Kyler Murray going to stand in the pocket and take the type of hits that Sam Darnold did? The answer is I don't want him to, because Sam Darnold weighs probably, 50 more pounds than Kyler Murray does. Right. So I think that there is a lot of pressure on Kevin O'Connell to adjust this in ways. People think you have to adjust it to make him Lamar Jackson or something. No, that's not it.
Right.
I think you have to adjust it to get that football out of his hands, but also still maximize the Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. So if you're taking deep shots, are you taking them quick? They used to do that with Kirk. They used to get the ball in his hands and then it was more of a pop fly. So he wouldn't have to sit back there, time and time again. But We did see in 2023, Kirk's average depth of target was one of the lowest in the league because he had almost figured out, okay, this is how I can work myself into a shorter, quicker passing offense within this scheme. But Kyler trying to do it the right way. Like, are those two things going to really balance out with each other?
And in 2024, I mean, we talk about Sam Darnold, but I mean, you know this, Collar and Garrett, you watch the games. I believe in Chicago, at Chicago that year, he had to exit the game for a snap, and he was constantly grabbing at his foot. He was hobbling all the time. And that is a guy who, just standing next to him and interviewing him on a weekly basis, he's a pretty sizable dude. And so it does lead to the Kevin O'Connell question, which for me, there's so many avenues we could take here too. It's like, what else do we want to see from a systematic adaptation standpoint if it's Kyler? Really, I mean, I'll probably start with just, how do you guys feel about the way they've set up this competition? Like, do you feel good about how it feels from the outside? Garrett, how do you feel about how Kevin O'Connell has kind of framed this competition?
I personally like this. There are some things I think KOC could improve on that I feel like as a fan base we've been wanting to be improved on over the past couple of years, probably most notably the run game. But with this competition specifically, as cliche as it is, I think this quote is kind of only used for either O-line, D-line, or wide receiver corners, but iron sharpens iron. There is no doubt that, I mean, each quarterback knows that they have to be at their best, which is, I mean, in theory, should only maximize the team's potential in 2026. And this team is coming off of a 9-win season in which the quarterbacks last year threw more interceptions than touchdowns. So, call me crazy here. I don't think that's going to happen in back-to-back years. So to go back to the question that you asked of if this is, a good way for O'Connell to set it up, I really think it is, because there's no definitive Kyler's our guy, JJ's our guy. Nobody knows anything. And whoever wins the starting quarterback after, of course, 50% is going to say, I knew it from the start. But with how it is now, I love it. And I think that you're going to get the absolute best out of each player.
Collar, what do you think about the specifics of, we saw today, just for example, Kyler started with the first team. JJ got some reps with the first team. Kyler probably got a couple more with the first team, but they both took a lot of snaps, relatively even split. And that feels like how it's going to be for at least like the next few days. And then I would expect some potentially further separation after that. How do you feel about the divvying up of the reps at this stage for an offense that obviously has to come out of the gate faster than they did last year?
So I want to separate my personal opinion from a criticism. So just because this is my opinion doesn't mean this is a criticism of the head coach. It is my opinion that this is unnecessary. That when you sign Kyler Murray, you're signing a multi-time Pro Bowl quarterback who has been at least 3 times in his career definitively a top 15 quarterback in the league. And you have someone who last year ranked 42nd in quarterback rating and who could not operate your offense and who could not throw accurately. And you are not in a position to take time with this. If I was the Tennessee Titans, I would say, well, of course, just going to play JJ McCarthy and see if the wheels stay on.
That's an unnecessary shot at the Titans. Come on.
Well, they deserve it, but there's probably, a couple more teams. If I was the Jets, I would just keep playing JJ McCarthy.
Thank you.
This is a team that is in a position to win with the rest of their roster. They're in a position to win with their best defensive coordinator in the entire NFL, with star wide receivers who are first-round draft picks or future Hall of Famers. And you brought back Hawkinson, you brought back Aaron Jones. Play the veteran quarterback, and if it goes sideways, well, then it's JJ McCarthy's job. This is his occupation to stay prepared and stay competitive. So I don't know that you should have to. If you have to motivate him, then he shouldn't be here. It's a quarterback. It's in the NFL, right? But I could see a little psychology with Kyler Murray to where there are questions about Kyler Murray and his ability to prepare and his ability to master a complete offense. Now, I personally think that he answered those questions with learning Drew Petzing's offense and operating it effectively in 2024. But if you have those questions, one of the ways to really push him would be to say, hey, man, this is not your job. Like, you better be locked in, competing every single day until you prove to me that you can learn my offense, until you prove to me. Otherwise, the kid's going to continue to have a chance. So I see why Kevin O'Connell is doing it. I have no issue with starting 50-50, but I do think that, and he says he has a date in mind. I think as we get a couple weeks into the summer, you better lock in. I think before the first preseason game, August 13th, I think is the last practice before the preseason game. Lock in and then pick your quarterback and go. And if I guess Kyler hasn't proven it to him by then we got to have some serious questions about Kyler.
You know what I love about first episode of the Vikings Collective? As you're talking there and you're giving the personal opinion with the Kyler facet of it, I'm thinking, how does Garret think of this right now? And this is, you know, what's fun is rarely in this world, in this ecosystem, do we get, you know, to just flesh out the you know, differing viewpoints, differing perspectives together. And that's what I think makes this so great. So I am curious, Garret, as I'm sitting here, like what, you know, you watch your channel, Collar talked about it earlier. Like you put a lot of time in from a schematic perspective and have watched a lot of ball. And so what's your view of Kyler and explain why?
So I wanted to like go off of something Matthew said which I largely agree with, like the sentiments of how we got here with, you know, we're bringing everybody back and we obviously the quarterback play last year was horrible and the multiple seasons of top 15 quarterback play. And as somebody personal stance that obviously JJ McCarthy, the highest quarterback selected in franchise history that wants him to work out. I would also say this, that if Kyler is that good, that unequivocally better, that long before August 13th, that we should know if he is the guy. And that is where I would, that's probably where I would land on that. Is I think Kyler Murray is a good quarterback. I don't necessarily buy into this belief that you see from, you know, like the anonymous scouts or anonymous people inside the Cardinals building, that now that he's outside of Arizona, that he's going to be this like, you know, top 5 or top 6 quarter or whatever ranking you want to go with here, that he's going to be this great player that we haven't seen so far in his career. And the part that I go back to with Kyler that really worries me is at times, whenever he is under pressure, it is deer in headlights bad at times. And that's the part that I significantly worry about most with Kyler, where if everything is in structure, everything is great, you know, in a perfect world, I would be ecstatic. I would be, hey, this is going to be a very fun year. But football is it's like life. There's adversity every single day, every single play, every single game. So I don't think that it's going to be as, you know, open and shut, cut dry, or whatever it is, you know, open and shut. Kyler's the guy from day one, but I'm excited. I just don't think it's going to be, there's not even a chance that JJ starts in 2026.
No, it's good to hear that. I was very curious. All right, we're gonna take a quick break and talk about our sponsor. That would be Prize Picks. New users, as you can see at the bottom, you can play for $5 and get $150 if you win when you use code HMA. I mean, you see that on the screen. It tells you everything you need to know. We're looking at a lineup here of Prize Picks, quarterbacks, and passing yards. At, you know, top left, you can see Dak Prescott, 4,024.5 passing yards. Who else we got? Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, why not throw Aaron Rodgers in the mix? 3,099.5 passing yards, I believe it is. I'll just say this, since I started with Dak Prescott, you guys think I'm crazy for being as high as I might be on the Cowboys this year? I mean, defensively, we'll see. But I think that Cowboys offense I love. Am I crazy for that?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I do have questions about everyone in the NFC East. So I think the door is open if they could have a top 5 offense, which Dak has had before. Can you have the 20th best defense? If you have the 20th, imagine what they would have been with it's kind of like the reverse of the Vikings conversation. If you could superimpose the Cowboys passing game onto the Vikings defense last year, you would have had a champion, right?
Yeah, and part of it might be Collar and Garret that I was blown away in person on that Sunday night game of what Dak gave Dallas a little bit of a chance in that game. And I was just really impressed by what he did. Is there any, Collar, Garret, is there anybody on this list right here where you're like, I'd be all in on that? I mean, I've been high on the Chargers. Maybe I'm crazy for that too.
I like Baker 3,500 just because he's in a contract year. And if he balls out, anywhere from 100, 150, $200 million contract if everything goes according to plan.
Where would he sign? Would it be?
It could be here. It could be here. It could be.
Very funny. All right. That is the sponsor Prize Picks. Like we said, new users, you play for $5, you get 150. If you win, use code HMA. I don't know. I mean, I could scroll through those probably all day long. So I'm glad we got to go through that. All right. We could go back and do Kyler JJ for another 7 hours on the Vikings Collective, but unfortunately, duty calls in many other capacities. So I do want to segue a little bit to, for me, the other major development, I'll just say, from being out at training camp on Wednesday, and that was Caleb Banks. And Caleb Banks being, not only was he just like out on the field, but it was first team drills, and he's out there, in a stance next to Jalen Redmond. And when we talked to him after practice, he was obviously ecstatic to be back. I'll just start you with this. Like, what are your expectations for this first round pick who, it's pretty clear just watching him out on the field. The guy moves different and he's just massive. So yeah, what are your expectations?
If it's anything less than 15 sacks, it's a bust right away. No,
Thank you.
But so just looking at some recent performances of defensive tackles and how much they actually played as rookies, usually 400 to 500 snaps is where it ends up. Now, someone like Mason Graham, who's a top pick last year, he played the entire season and every single down. But for most everybody else, like the Kenneth Grants of the world, there is a development curve that goes along with this position. Now, where I'm most intrigued is that in college, you saw a lot of Caleb Banks lining up over the A gap to where centers and guards could just kind of double team him and get underneath his pads, and his height really worked against him. And then every once in a while he would get them and get a good get off and just throw someone and murder everything in front of him. But they're moving him out a little bit. And we even saw this today, that he's going to be 3 technique to maybe traditional 3-4 defensive end.
Yeah.
I think it gives him a little more space. I think it gives him opportunities to get more one-on-one type situations for him. So my expectation is that we have some games where you're like, did Caleb Banks play today? And other games you're like, oh my gosh. And that there's going to be some serious high-end reps from him. But I also think that Brian Flores will put him in favorable positions and will allow him also to just be a body mover at times. We know Flores loves to do this with DTs, sometimes to their chagrin, but like he likes to take a DT and say, just move that guard to the left as far as you possibly can, and Eric Wilson will get the sack. And I think when you look at his size and his power, that if he can do those things, and he has come across this way, is willing to kind of sacrifice himself at times to where maybe on the PFF grade and maybe on the sack total and maybe on the pressure total, we're like, oh, he maybe had 1 pressure today. And then you go back and watch the film, as I know that you guys do, and you go, oh, I see. He was mauling this guy, and that's why Cashman had 2 sacks. That's why Metellus got a sack. So my expectation is that you want to keep him healthy. You want to keep him fresh. He has not played a real football season since 2024. So don't expect him to go out and play 60 snaps for you right away. You want to keep him fresh. But if it's like 25 to 30 a week over the entire season, he ends up with 4 or 5 sacks. We like most of the things that he's doing in terms of schematically. I think that's where to set the bar. That, the talk of it's boom or bust. It's like, actually, I don't think that about Caleb Banks. I think that his floor is set fairly high just by being that massive and quick. It's just where the ceiling is going to go could probably take 3 years to find out.
I thought it was pretty funny after practice. He talked, and he's an electric personality. He said he bought another spider. He got 3 more snakes. I think one of the reporters was like, "Are they locked up in the house?" He's like, "Yeah, you don't come over." It was highly entertaining stuff. But I asked him personally, like, what has Ryan Nielsen been like to play for? And he paused before answering, and he's like, what's the word? I don't know if he was about to use a word that he probably shouldn't have used on cameras that were about to circulate every comment. But there's no question that Ryan Nielsen, the new D-line coach, has a certain standard that I think for a guy like him, just having navigated the career in college that he did. I think that's going to be really productive for him. I personally, Garrett, and I'll be curious your thoughts. Like, I think there's part of me that doesn't want to go down the road of can he accomplish over a 17-game season? Like, for me, I just start with, can we get to the end of training camp? And this guy is proving that the consistency, the stamina, the relentlessness shows throughout that entire stretch. And if so, I with how much I know Brian Flores liked him leading into the draft, like I would imagine they'd want to use him. So, Garrett, what did you feel about the pick? And then when you heard today that he's active and on the field, I imagine that was a pretty good feeling.
So I'm not going to lie. I was not a fan of the pick. There was, I went live for our pick, raw reaction, and it was not pretty. I thought we were going to take Dylan Thieneman, but now that I've had, a couple months to really digest the pick, by the way, my biggest concern was health related. It wasn't anything to do with Caleb Banks, the football player. It was, do we have a player that's actually going to be able to stay on the field for his rookie contract and a player that we could potentially see a second contract? But if we can assure that, which, I hope with how much, how many resources the Vikings have, that everything is good on that end. This is going to be, or this should be a very fun player. But I think Matthew did a really great job of setting what the expectations should be in Caleb Banks' rookie season, because defensive tackles, and this also applies to interior offensive linemen as well, you go from playing 19, 20, 21-year-old guys every Saturday to playing guys like Dexter Lawrence on Sunday and guys like Chris Jones on Sunday, these big 27, 30-year-old grown men. And that also applies to, the interior offensive line for who Caleb Banks is going to be going up against with somebody like Joe Thuney of the Bears this year. If we can have the splash plays throughout camp, maybe he has one or two in the preseason, and then if we have a 25 to 30 pressure rookie season with, like Matthew said, maybe 3 to 5 sacks, I would be absolutely ecstatic with that in Caleb Banks' rookie season. And I really think that this year specifically should be viewed as a foundation, groundwork laid year for what him and especially Dominique Orange, our third-round pick, should be looking to accomplish in 2027.
Are you calling it year zero, Garrett? This is year zero for Caleb Banks.
I am. In a lot of ways it is, because we got to adjust. There's a big transition from, going up against Central Florida to Joe Thuney. And I think it's year zero.
Listen, as the resident SEC guy on the show, I'm not, if they played Alabama, they were in it. Okay. No, but you're right. The transition is going to be massive. All right. If you look on the crawl there, it's got pivotal roster questions. The production team at HMA has done a great job. Muvsy and the folks. But I want to use that last subject to kind of just go around the horn and give some opinions and react a little bit related to certain position groups on this roster. So I'll start with Coller. I'll start with you. What position group is on your mind? What opinion do you have about it? Just let it rip. This is what you do. I know this.
Well, I'll start out with suddenly kind of interested in what happens at linebacker, with Jamal Adams being part of the mix here, because this is a position that we've seen some guys as undrafted free agents make it and become special teamers. Or last year, Eric Wilson was supposed to be a special teamer, and then he turned out to be one of their most important linebackers. So Eric Wilson in year 2 with Brian Flores right from the jump. Blake Cashman, I think we know what he can do, but health has been suspect at times for Blake Cashman, who just plays like a maniac with his hair on fire and does suffer injuries sometimes. So is Jamal Adams really a part of this group? And we saw him today. He is big. He is a big guy. Like, he's wearing 54, but you didn't have to be like, oh, that's a safety wearing linebacker clothes. Like, no, he looked like a linebacker. He's probably, I would guess he's put on at least 10 pounds since he was really a safety. So is he actually a part of this? Is he going to play some kind of role that Flores carves out? does Ivan Pace have any chance as somebody who was kind of a darling for this team in 2023? And then the guys behind them, the undrafted free agents, and can somebody make that interesting? And I'll throw another guy that I talked to after practice today, Jake Golday. Where does he fit in? I mean, is this somebody that they're going to try to get on the field pretty quickly? Because I think he has a great attitude and is a high IQ guy and versatile college. So this room is suddenly more intriguing than I would have said even like a couple of weeks ago.
The Jamal Adams, you said, he looks like safety or linebacker. I asked him, like, what do you expect? Where do you expect to play? He said, I can play safety, linebacker, corner, nose tackle, D end. I can walk your dog if you want me to. I was like, all right, that's welcome to Minnesota, Jamal. But it was really, actually talking to him was really interesting. It seemed like he was really reflective on the very serious torn quad, I believe, that he had in 2022 and just the opportunity that he has. So, I mean, Garrett, what did you make of that? Like, what did you make of that? Before we, we'll whip it around. I've got I know, Collar, you don't think I do. I've got an opinion in the holster. Garrett, what Jamal Adams, what do you think of that? What do you think about the linebackers?
So on the base level for Jamal Adams, I thought it was, expect nothing and hope for the best, because what is the worst that happens that he comes in? Oh no, he gets cut at the end of camp. Oh no, that's just a storyline people forget about 2 weeks into the season. But Jamal Adams, I don't think it's going to be that, by the way. I think there's a good chance that he makes this 53-man roster and that we legitimately have linebacker depth with Cashman, Wilson, of course, Jay Golday and Jamal Adams. And if somebody goes down and like Matthew mentioned, where Blake plays with his hair on fire, that it's not, oh man, we don't have anybody that can back him up. And Jamal Adams, I did see, I think Alec, maybe you tweeted it. It was that he came here because of Nolan and Brian Flores. So yeah. The fact that we have somebody that wants to come in off the streets, that's really bought in, I can't wait to see it. And I would also preface that this is not going to be like, a free agent gem and expect a Pro Bowl caliber season, but this is a player that can and has played at a high level, obviously several years ago, yes, but he can come in, make a couple splash plays, especially in a system where Brian Flores is going to set his guys up for success. So I guess a too long, didn't listen would be like expect the worst, hope for the best.
My mind when the signing happened and, you talked to me about it, my mind immediately goes to like, is Flores thinking up some personnel package that counteracts where the offensive trends are going in certain downs and distances in a way that that only he probably would. Like, that was my first kind of reaction to it. But Collar, the other thing you didn't mention there with the linebackers, and you talked about Blake Cashman, but Blake Cashman's in the final year of his contract. And typically, and I think if you look at his deal and where it is in the market, it's in a pretty interesting spot. And obviously he was out there today. He participated in practice from the get-go. So, relationship wise, everything feels pretty good, but I do wonder, how far does that thing have to go? Does he expect something? And if not, you now at least have another potential option there. But yeah, the room is more interesting probably than I would have entered thinking.
All right. Did you say that you had an opinion? Because I was waiting for this. The Athletic does not allow its reporters to expand into takes. So right. This is a big moment for you as a talk host.
That's exactly right. It's one of the things that, almost made me late for the show. I had to get clearance and make sure I could provide it. But my opinion is that I think there's a very realistic chance in the event that Harrison Smith, who is still undecided, isn't starting for the Vikings week 1, that Jacoby Thomas, the team's 3rd-round pick for Miami, sees realistic snaps defensively for the team on defense. Part of the reason I say that is because he mixed in with the ones a lot today. There were many sequences out there where Josh Metellus was at nickel. They had some Theo Jackson deep, some Jacoby Thomas deep. Now, how much of some of this was affected by Isaiah Rodgers, who was kind of on the sideline for a little bit toward the end of the practice, but didn't see him walk off with an injury? I don't know. From everything I understand, the optimism that the Vikings had for Jacoby Thomas when they drafted him and everything they've seen since gives me fair reason to make the opinion and prediction, Collar, that Jacoby Thomas could realistically play meaningful defensive snaps from the outset. What do you think of that? Did I do good enough?
You did. Well done. Yeah. I mean, I think that when it comes to the safety position, it's not like some other ones. Like if you draft Caleb Tiernan in the 3rd round at tackle, you're not like, oh yeah, day 1 tackle, but safety can be that. And we saw that from Xavier Watts last year. It's the 3rd round draft pick. He jumps right in. He's a really good player. It's like, yeah, we kind of see that all the time where 2nd, 3rd, even 4th round safeties, that position. Cam Bynum, it didn't take him very long before he was a good starting player. So I think it's got the fastest transition. I am curious, Garrett, though, as a tape and draft guy, what you thought of him coming out, because I had not studied him going into the draft. We knew that there was a good possibility they could sign a safety. So I've really only watched his last year. I'm like, okay, this guy is making a lot of football plays for Miami, but I'm not a draft analyst. So I was intrigued by his playmaking. And also when Josh Metellus went out of his way to tell us how quickly he was picking up on the defense.
Tell us with Metellus.
Yeah, he did tell us, Metellus. But yeah, I mean, like when he told us that, I thought, all right, well, you've got my attention with Jacoby Thomas. But what did you think of him coming out?
So Jacoby Thomas was a player that, again, I go back to my raw reaction real time. I was like Dylan Thieneman 1st round, Emmanuel McNeil-Moore in 2nd round. I was kind of like, if we're going to address this position, why didn't we take a better player? However, with Jacoby Thomas, this is a player that had a 4 interception season back in 2022. He had a 5 interception season last year. And generally when safeties, especially at the collegiate level, have multiple seasons with 3+ interceptions, let alone 4+ interceptions, multiple years, it's not a coincidence. So this is another pick that I've talked myself into over the past couple of months where I wasn't the biggest fan of our safety room last year. And I really like the take that Alec had with, Matthew, having some fun about, not giving takes. I really like this take that Jacoby Thomas could be a pretty early contributor to this defense. And I think we missed Cam Bynum's ability to make plays on the ball at times last year. And not that Cam Bynum was Jacoby Thomas's pro comparison, but there is a role for Jacoby Thomas where he can play different positions within the defense. But this is a player that was routinely around the football for Miami last year. And if you are routinely around the football, especially as a safety, good things generally happen. And especially in a Brian Flores defense where quarterbacks get under pressure, we don't know where pressure's coming from. Let's hurry up, throw a ball. We have a tip pass, bats right in his arms because he's always around the football. I like the Jacoby Thomas selection the more time goes on.
I'll never forget. So I don't even know if I wrote this, but after they drafted him, I talked to Corey Otherman, who's a DC at Miami, and we were talking about the violence he plays with, how much Flores is going to like Jacoby Thomas playing with that much violence. And I asked Corey, he's like very serious. I was like, is it ever too much violence? On the phone, no. It was. I'll just never forget that. So I do think the personality play style probably fits. Garrett, you have an opinion. We're gonna wrap with one explain a tweet that we've got, but I want to hear an opinion from you, Garrett, before we wrap.
All right. I like one opinion rather. I can't wait to see Damon Claiborne, how that plays out. 6th round pick we traded up for. We actually traded future draft capital for. Frank Smith is our assistant head coach, comes over from the Dolphins, offensive coordinator for the Dolphins the past 4 years. We also drafted fullback Max Brederson. A lot of connection between Max Brederson and Damon Claiborne of Devon Achane and Alec Ingold that, we have the run game more figured out this year. So a take that I have is there could be multiple 25+ yard runs from Damon Claiborne this year. I'm not the most sold on Aaron Jones at this point in his career or Jordan Mason being a true, not franchise back, but we'll say RB1 to carry that type of workload. So Damon Claiborne playing meaningful snaps and making splash plays throughout his rookie season.
Yeah, Collar and I were talking about Damon Claiborne sitting up on the perch. I think I'm gonna have to be calmed down on Damon Claiborne probably throughout training camp. The guy has juice. I mean, it's very clear.
I'll just say this though. He strikes me as the type of guy that on Madden that I would look and see he had 97 speed and make him my starting running back and then run for 2,000 yards with him. But in real life, the guy doesn't really play that much. 180 something pounds, little concerned about that in terms of like taking the punishment.
Fumbled the ball a lot in his last year at Wake Forest too.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think that he has the potential to be a very good running back, but he's going to have to get bigger and he's going to have to get experience because KOC is not going to trust a running back out there that doesn't know the playbook inside and out. And I would not be surprised, and we'll see what happens here. I wouldn't be surprised if they start out the season with Xavier Scott as the guy who's RB3 because he can pass protect. He caught some passes last year and they were high on him last year. He was kind of the random running back that they were into. The potential is there. It's just that we got to see it because we've seen this crazy blazing fast running back a few times behind starters and KOC has never trusted that guy. So maybe this will be the time.
All right. We're going to end with explain a tweet. Here are the rules. You ready? This is going to be a theme on the show. We're going to read it. Each of us are going to read a tweet. You got a minute to read it and explain it. Okay. I will go first and do the honors. This was a tweet that I had. I'm at least for the first show, it's going to be a tweet that we do ourselves, but we can edit that. The Brian O'Neill extension got a little buried, but I do think it's important to say this guy is revered internally by coaches and teammates. Vikings prioritize that commitment and consistency. Expectations for the O-line should be given should be high given the investment. And that's really, I could talk about Brian O'Neill, who was an absolute joy to cover. But for me, when that contract officially settles in, the Vikings offensive line investment is going to be one of the preeminent investments that teams are making in offensive line. And so the production from that group, in my opinion, just got to see that in 2026. That's a serious explain a tweet, Collar. Some of them aren't going to be that serious. It'll probably be me tweeting like a Jersey Mike sandwich or something, but I'll let you go next.
Okay, maybe people could see this. There's a picture of Victor Viking there. Maybe it's not in you can kind of see it. Here's the tweet. I said, tomorrow begins my 10th year, that being yesterday I tweeted this, is my 10th camp covering the Vikings. Couldn't have asked for a better decade in the Twin Cities. Have so much appreciation for my colleagues inside the media room, like you, Alec, who have always been there for me, the PR staff, coaches, many, many players who have made it a great experience, and the indefatigable Vikings fans who have supported Purple Insider. Grateful to be able to keep on rolling. Let's play some football. And the explanation for that is it's pretty clear cut. Grateful for my 10th training camp as a Minnesota Vikings reporter. Can't wait to see how this all plays out. And just want to say that I'm excited to go forward with this podcast. This was our debut voyage, but adding this a little bit of a different thing, adding Garret to the mix, somebody that I've respected his YouTube work, comes on my show on Purple Insider all the time. It's just very exciting times, man. So even though there's a lot up in the air for the Minnesota Vikings, #blessed.
that was wholesome, Collar. Garret, your explain your tweet.
So whenever we talked about explain your tweet, I thought we were going like joking, like we were gonna have to actually explain something, and then you guys go like too like awesome, so there's still a part of me where it's like, should I go like joke tweet or should I,
It's totally fine if you do. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna stick with I feel like it's fitting for the first show. The Vikings tweeted earlier about, we talked about the JJ presser. This is a tweet that there's a lot of bookmarks for this. I quoted a tweet from JJ's presser today. I said, this is probably one of the best pressers I've ever seen, completely locked in. And there's a lot of bookmarks for it. And if he doesn't win the starting job or if he throws a bad interception in the playoffs, people are going to come back, you're an idiot, whatever. But where I think that JJ was today within the press conference was similar to that one iconic Kobe clip of, you're up 2-0, what's there to be smiling about, and he's like, job's not finished. And that's kind of how I feel about JJ entering year 3 in what is very clearly a now or never year for him. And that's I think fitting for the first Vikings Collective episode. But also I definitely agree with Collar's sentiment. Very grateful to be here and #blessed as well.
As am I. This was a blast. Obviously, as you guys, I mean, the listeners and viewers don't know this. I mean, we were repping this all day. We've run through many, many times. So to see it all come to fruition, the debut of the Vikings Collective show was awesome. So thank you guys for being here and watching. For Matthew Coller of the Purple Insider, for Garret Greenlee of Football Analysis, for HMA and the Vikings Collective, I'm Alec Lewis, the Athletic, and we will see you guys next week, I promise.